Over the years, I've made a number of videos about Branson, Missouri. In fact, I've made another video about this theater, the Andy Williams Moon River Theater, before. But on my most recent trip out to Branson, I noticed the entire theater was basically in ruin. It was getting revamped for a new attraction. Now, before we get into what it looks like today, I want to go back in time and see what it used to look like. The year was 2010. There was a ton of traffic in Branson. It was my first trip there and my first trip to the Moon River Theater. It was the only time I ever saw Andy Williams perform because he got sick the next year and would pass away the year after that. It was a really great show. The next year I went back and knew I wanted to visit the theater again, even though at the time Andy Williams wasn't performing anymore. In the lobby, because Andy was sick, they had this board that you could sign, and I was lucky enough that I was able to sign it and hope to see him there next year, but unfortunately he would pass away the next year. I literally bought every piece of merchandise I could find because I was just so happy to be in Branson, Missouri at 20-something years old. I went back in 2013 and the crowds were still there. The theater still looked beautiful. It was still an amazing sight to see late at night. The merchandise shop was still filled with Andy Williams merchandise, and the show had changed. It was now the Osmond brothers and the Lennon sisters, but there were some great tributes to Andy Williams throughout the show. I filmed them on a digital camera I had at the time, so I apologize if it looks like it was filmed on a potato. I would make return trips in 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017. Each time it felt a little more disconnected from the theater I remembered. And maybe that had to do with getting older, maybe it had to do with the fact that Andy Williams had passed away. I'm not really too sure. All I knew was that things were changing, and they were going to continue to change, and there was nothing I could do about that. While I hoped it would remain a shrine to Andy Williams' legacy and his career, I knew that's probably not realistic. And things had to evolve and change. The Andy Williams Moon River Grill had closed, and I had been back a couple more times in 2018 and a couple other years, but they were all solo trips when I happened to be out that way. In fact, one time when I stayed at my favorite hotel, I particularly requested the Andy Williams Christmas room, which was basically just a couple pictures of Andy Williams, but it was still trying to support the theater and the town that I love so much. The Moon River Theater was taken over by one of the Osmond brothers, and since then it's been sold once again, and they're turning it into some sort of a Bible attraction. My understanding is it's some kind of a ride through history, and I don't know that that's something that's going to work, and I could be wrong. I'm not an ultra-religious person, but I know there's many people out there who are. Is there a lot of repeat business in that? I don't know. But on my most recent trip, it was just sad to see, the artwork that once stood outside was no longer there. Those huge, almost rusted metal animals, which my understanding is now they're part of a zoo. They were shipped out and sent to a zoo somewhere. So at least they live on somewhere. I tried to get inside. Unfortunately, they were under construction and they didn't want anything being filmed inside. I asked them what happened with all the Andy Williams memorabilia. Where did that all go? And they didn't have an answer. That they kind of thought it went back to the family, which makes sense. I hope somewhere in Branson there's some kind of a museum or something where that stuff can be displayed and put out there so other people can see it. But just walking around, I mean, that theater was so beautiful. And I mean, parts of it still are. But it was one of my favorite things about Branson. I mean, I could just walk around that theater and inside all day long. And for whatever reason, there was this serenity or this calm that went along with it. That's, I guess, like what some people would think church is, right? But for me, it was that attachment to Andy Williams and, those Christmas shows and seeing people get dressed up to go to a show. And, a lot of that stuff that's changing in the world we live in now. I can remember there was a line of people outside waiting for the little coin-operated fish food dispenser so they could feed the fish. And that's no longer there. I remember the parking lot was so filled with cars, you would have to park all the way down the hill. I remember the Christmas decorations that were up seemingly all year long. And I remember walking around and hearing Andy Williams' music on the speakers outside the theater. I remember looking over to the corner and seeing the Moon River Grill, now a completely different restaurant. And I remember the feeling I got when I first visited Branson. Now, just a memory, but a happy memory. I don't know what the future holds for the Moon River Theater, and in my dream scenario, it becomes a museum dedicated to Andy Williams, but I know that might not be practical. What I do know is that in going back through my old photos and videos, I found the very first picture I took outside the theater. And by complete coincidence, my last video, or at least my most recent. Thanks for watching.